In this podcast, we chat about the win against Birmingham, the defeat against Millwall. We look ahead to Boro's new search for a manager and Boro's game against Blackburn. This is the Boro Breakdown podcast, and this is our Boro Matchday Chatter in a pod.
Wants support. Curtis Fleming is there on the edge of the area. Fleming for Craig Hignett. Hit it, Higgy. Higgy hits the treble!
Ravanelli coming alive again. Janino wants the ball played to him. Ravanelli spots out Emerson!
Hello and welcome to the Boro Breakdown podcast with Jonny, Dana and Tom. We are the Boro podcast that gives you all of your Boro Matchday Chatter in a podcast. And guys, I feel like we're coming full circle and I feel really, really upset because we're going to talk about another defeat, another manager, and Boro being 20th place in the championship table and taking 3 points from the week. So guys, I knew you would be a little bit upset probably at the start of this podcast. So I thought I'd do something a little bit different, and I thought I'd welcome you to Jonny's happy place, the place where everything is really happy. So I thought I'd give you some really happy news. And if you don't watch us on YouTube, you will absolutely love our happy place with Dyke stealing the sun and me outside of Shower Island in a shark costume.
Jonny, is that an actual photo of you in a shark costume?
Oh, yeah. If people follow me on Instagram, you will see I have me in a shark costume.
Hang on, were you the left shark from that Katy Perry thing a few years ago?
I wasn't, no, but I was the baby in Baby Shark, if you are interested. But I thought, I'd lighten the mood a little bit and give you some good news from the week. So Sharon Osbourne turned 70 today, so happy birthday to Sharon. Bears, Bisons and Wolves are making a comeback, so nice to see Wolves improving after Bruno Lage getting the sack. A really interesting one, Seth MacFarlane has actually got a frog named after him. It's called Hyloska Seth MacFarlane, and it's just made its first appearance. So yeah, that is a pretty cool fact, isn't it? Liverpool has been announced as Eurovision Song Contest host city, and I thought I'd do a Teesside related one, and it was a really nice piece in Teesside Live this, but the KFC in Dolby Way, Middlesbrough, got an inspection rating of 5 for cleanliness. And that's one of the highest in the UK. So up the Teesside, and that's really nice, isn't it? But I've got a riddle to leave you with. I'll come back to the end of the show. But what do Alexander the Great and Winnie the Pooh have in common? So that's your riddle, and I'll come back to it at the end of the show. But anyway, we'll talk about our 3 words and how we're feeling. So now you're much happier and feel like you've been to Jonny's happy place. Dana, how are you feeling in 3 words?
I don't know how to recover from that, to be honest. My 3 words, I'm going to take the feeling down, the happy feeling down for a second. I just feel quite sad and deflated, even after what you've just served up there, Jonny. Remind myself of the match yesterday. It's just really sad and deflated. And, I went into this season with hope and optimism, and I never felt like it was too much of that. I never felt like I was going overboard with it. I just had hope and belief. I thought that it was going to be an ascent from last season coming into this one, and it's more a rapid descent, to be honest. And it kind of feels like Boro are hurtling down from the sky and are going to soon crash into the Eston Hills and combust. That's kind of what it feels like. It's just a massive shame that the season's sort of already, in my opinion, kind of petered out. Not in terms of possibilities, because there's still a lot of points to play for, but my feelings towards it, as I said, I was once quite hopeful, and now I'm just a little bit apathetic in a way.
And to be honest, you were absolutely right to have that optimism at the start of the season. Everything was looking bright, and in typical Boro fashion, we just are 20th in the championship table without a manager, and things are falling apart. Tom, how are you feeling in 3 words?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say a bit deflated, but then Jonny's happy place happened, so I guess a bit confused now, and that kind of goes double for the Boro season, to be fair. As Dana mentioned there, I mean, I think it was a general feeling around the Boro fan base that we were all optimistic for this season and like we were going to kick on. And it's just kind of like, how did it end up in this situation? It looked like, we were going to be set up so well. And, while the first half of his tenure had given us some such good football, the second half, not so much, but you could still kind of see the signs there. And then the Marseille game happened. Going into the season off the back of that, watching some great football at Riverside against a Champions League team, and then just absolutely shocking for like about most of the season. We have been unlucky in a few games, but for the most part, there's players there who forgot how to play up until this last week, really.
Yeah, I think when we look at our performances, and it's really difficult to digest. I think after that Sunderland game, we've been really, really poor, like awful. I think prior to that, you could have said being unlucky, we've switched off in key moments. It'll work out. We'll be in the top 6. I think we'll be perfectly fine. And I think we've just completely combusted. And obviously the season's not over by any means, but it has to be an improvement very soon. But I think my 3 words probably be sun, sangria, and Spain. I think because I was having a lovely time in Spain. I didn't want to come back. I was like, what? Let these two crack on. They're on ITV News. You're in the newspapers every week. So, I mean, maybe I'm the weak link here. Maybe I should just stay in Spain, and you two should just carry on with everything else. So, but no, I think Boro brought me down to earth, and we were miserable watching it yesterday, Tom. So, that was pretty much it, wasn't it? So,
Aye.
But let's talk about like the first game of the week and look at Birmingham, because Leo Percevic took charge for the first time. Absolute passionate Boro team with a passionate leader in Leo. Hayden Hackney, of course, got his first league start for Middlesbrough, and things were looking well with Chuba scoring early, and Boro held on to get the 3 points. But Tom, how would you assess the performance against Birmingham?
Well, I don't even think that was anywhere near the best we've ever played. It was nice to get the win, but it was still a hell of a lot better than we have played previously this season. I think the key to it was that we were just doing the basics correctly, which I can't say for a lot of the matches that kind of preceded it. I think it was such a difference between Coventry and Birmingham. In Coventry, you had passes going 5 yards behind players, and people's movement was all over the place. Birmingham, it just seemed like we did those basics so well. And we didn't really do anything kind of more than that. It wasn't anything flash or anything like that. It was just, we covered the basics. And even doing that was just a massive improvement on where we were, and ended up, we deserved the win.
Dana, what's your thoughts as well?
I thought we started well. I thought the press and the intention was good, and then I think we petered out, which is to be expected. I think the game went flat around 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes before half time, and it never really picked up after that. But we started well. We did. I thought Crooks was much better in winning those second balls that he's previously been quite weak in, I think, in those duels in midfield. And as Tom said, I thought we were better in the basics because, again, reiterate what Tom said there. We have been poor in those little niggly parts of the game that are a big part in winning games. Those second balls, those loose balls, winning the key battles in key areas. We just haven't been good in those moments, as we've mentioned on many podcasts this season. So we were much better in the first half, but yeah, we faded and we didn't really pick up that energy. I will say though, it was a fairly poor contest, and it was how I expected Boro against Birmingham to go on a midweek night. 2 quite poor teams on the night. I would say overall it felt like a clash between 15th and 16th, and I know that that's not where either side are in the table. I'd love to be 15th or 16th at this point, but it felt like a kind of lower down the table sort of affair, to be honest.
You said the game petered out and it was quite a dull game in the second half. So do you think the subs helped Boro keep control and try to limit the danger or try and stop the game when Birmingham were coming into it?
A little bit, but I also think Birmingham were just pretty naff in general, to be honest. As I said, it was just two quite poor teams playing against each other. Um, I think Leo made the changes at good points, because picking up from the first half going into the second, if you don't have that energy, even that 1% increase in energy in the second half, I do think you need to make a change. And I did say at the time to my dad, like, we need to make a change here, and he did. So yeah, maybe that 1% difference was all it really took in the end to give us that little tiny increase in energy. But all in all, I think we did. I never, to be honest, I never felt like Birmingham were going to score in that game, to be honest.
I mean, they nearly did when Dykesdale played the ball back.
Well, yeah,
And
yeah.
then they nearly nicked in and scores. But yeah, I agree with you on that one. But in terms of Hayden Hackney, as I know I said at the start of the show, he made his first league start of the season and got man of the match. Boro fans seem to be really happy with his performance. Dana, how would you sum it up? Because by your Twitter account, it seemed like it wasn't. You weren't overly impressed, but you just thought it was fairly decent, I guess.
No, I think this is the thing with football discourse. It's binary, isn't it? It's either good or bad, and in between just doesn't exist. But I thought he was okay, and that in itself is okay. He's got a good playing style. I wouldn't say he's got a low center of gravity, but he's very nippy and nimble, I think, in being able to kind of drop the shoulder. He did it in the first half where he dropped the shoulder and completely left his man. I think it might be Bielik, and he showed some promise. But as was the case with the whole team, the whole game, I don't think anybody really stood out. And maybe Hackney did stand out for Boro fans because he wasn't expected to be in the team. And I think with a lot of young players that do come into the team, we do kind of inflate their performance. Don't get me wrong, I thought he was okay, and that's fine. I would like to see more of him. But yeah, he was all right. There was some good bits. He did fade out. I was expecting him to come off when he did, because it usually happens with young players, doesn't it? They don't ever last the full game, but he does have potential. I would like to see more of him, like I said, because he is a ball carrier, and that is something that we are missing in midfield. So hopefully we could see more of him. Obviously, he came on yesterday against Millwall, but it was just a crap game from the point that he came on, to be honest. So unfortunate for him there, but yeah, he was all right.
Yeah, it's interesting as well. I think the Boro's biggest weakness probably this year, bar the defensive errors that we've made, is that progression from midfield to forward, getting the ball through the lines and trying to create chances from there, from Muniz or Akpom, and trying to get the ball out wide to Giles and Jones. But Tom, Akpom did return with a goal, and you were fairly impressed with his link-up play with Muniz.
Yeah, I think we're starting to see some encouraging signs with that. And weirdly enough, I think it started in that extremely poor Coventry game. Second half, in terms of the hold-up play from Muniz and the link-up, he was getting some really good kind of like first touches just to kind of like knock it into Akpom's path. And there's definitely something to work with there. I do think... I think like we said before, no one expected Akpom to even be in the team this year, and then he's come in and proven that he should be. And then even in yesterday's game, I still thought there was some encouraging signs for not only that link up, but what Akpom can actually offer as a striker. Because what we saw was him being able to kind of use his body well to create space for himself, and also a bit of pace with his dribbling as well. So I think those two up front have the attributes to be a pretty decent partnership, but I by no means think that we're even seeing close to the best of them yet.
Yeah, and this partnership will only grow as well if they get the opportunity to play together more. I agree with everything you're saying there on creating space, but bringing each other in. But I thought yesterday they just didn't really click. But I think that was more of like Boro's way of playing yesterday, and the progression was all wrong. And we played into Millwall's handling. And let's chat about Millwall, because the coaching team did make 3 changes to the side that beat Birmingham. And it was a very, very dull day at the Den, with us getting beat 2-0 and having some horrendous errors, especially for that second goal. But we'll come to that in a second. But Dana, I hate talking about this game, and I felt like I wanted to switch it off after about 5-10 minutes because I just felt like the defeat was coming. But how would you assess that performance against Millwall on Saturday?
Probably that. Probably that, in all honesty. You know
Moving
what?
on.
No, Leo said before the game that in order to get something, we have to give everything. And I made a note of that before the game, and I never thought I'd actually use it afterwards. But the way that we performed in the second half, in particular, when we knew that we were a goal down, and then obviously we went 2-0 down, I didn't see that fight and that desire from the players to get back into the game. They looked all at sea. They looked like they were on completely different wavelengths, and I didn't really see any frustration either. So the commitment there was just really sad to see the kind of disconnect of that whole team. And yeah, I mean, we started. I thought the first half was. Listen, we were toothless, but we were creating some good moments in the build-up, and crucially with Boro, I mean, we've spoken about it on the podcast this season, being poor in key defensive moments. We were poor in key offensive moments yesterday. You know, those 5-yard balls that just went wayward. When you want your touch to be good enough to take it into your grasp, it was like a trampoline. The crossing 9 times out of 10 was poor and it was inconsistent. It was those moments that really broke our attacks down. There was a great counter-attack in the first half where Crooks had the ball. It was just a simple pass to Jones in the space in front of him, and it was played behind him, and he had to quickly kind of recover those yards, keep the ball in play. Then all of a sudden, you're in a much wider position to be able to deliver that ball, and Jones's deliveries from wide are not good. They're really poor, actually. So you want him more in those tight spaces closer to the 18-yard box, and Crooks just delivered a really, really bad pass, which summed up our game. And then another moment that summed up our game was in the second half when Ryan Giles went to take a throw. Nobody offered themselves for the ball, and then I think it was given as a foul throw. Just sums us up. I mean, to be honest, I'm glad that it was given as a foul throw because we probably would have frigging conceded from it the way that we did against Coventry. So, yeah, it was poor in the second half. Was just, I went for a toilet break, to be honest. I checked out. I didn't want to watch that game, and I don't blame anybody else if they stop watching.
I mean, how long? That was a long toilet break. I mean, if you're as well. So, but we'll get past that bit. But Tom, new coaching team, obviously with Lids, Mark Tinkler and Catamall and Leo, but the same old mistakes again. Is there more to it than just individual errors now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there has to be. I think there's certainly a confidence issue, which I wouldn't have thought there would be after Birmingham. It did seem like we were back on track, and you know, I wouldn't say the confidence was sky high after that game, but a win should have done the world of good, and they did look like they'd actually played football together before. So it was starting to look a little bit better after Birmingham. I think it'd be unfair to kind of put everything on the new coaching team. They've only really had them a week. Whoever the new manager is going to have some work to do when he comes in to cut out the mistakes and you know bring the players up. But I mean, Gary Rowett was saying it in the post match presser for his side that he knew all of Boro's threat was going to be from set pieces or down the wings. And I don't know, Millwall just kind of set up perfectly. I thought Jones had a pretty poor game against Murray Wallace, who I thought played really well. As Dana was saying there, his delivery is not that great anyway. And then I can't remember too many good deliveries from either side during that game. But I don't feel like you play that way against Millwall anyway. Like when you look at who they have in their defensive line, it's going to be very difficult for the strikers to kind of like win anything there. I mean, I think the only thing I can kind of say, I think this actually came off a set piece, but Muniz had a free header in the first half, which he should have done a lot better with. And I think that was probably one of the only good deliveries I can remember from that. But overall, I feel like, you know, we did play into their hands. They were set up to stop us, and it's a bit concerning now that, there's two managers in the space of a few weeks who've both come out and said the same thing about how to stop us, and the teams have executed that. I'd say fairly perfectly, but we did score 2 against Cardiff. But it's concerning that we're that obvious to people, and if they have a plan to stop us, we don't have a plan to stop that.
There's been a few managers that have come out and said it. I was going to make a thread actually on Twitter about it. There was, from Steve Bruce, the very first game of the season, Paul Ince, Tony Mowbray, a lot of managers have come out and highlighted our weaknesses. Steve Bruce, put a man on Jonny House and restrict the build-up, stop Jones, double up on Jones, Paul Ince said, and Giles as well. It is very easy to stop us. It's easy to expose our weaknesses. And one of them is also balls in behind, which was a problem for us last season as well. And this season even more so, because I think you do have that more attacking dynamic with Giles now, with Jones as well. On the wings, they're very advanced, aren't they? They're very attacking. So you're going to have that fallback of we're going to get caught in behind. But as I said many times on this podcast, we've got to be better in possession. We're just not, like, the simple passes, the basics of football, we're just not doing them right. And it's infuriating because we were doing them spot on last season, which makes it all the more annoying that we're not doing them properly this season.
Yeah, you're both spot on. Like, I was going to come to that point as well around like us in possession and the way that Millwall played yesterday. They were set up in a very narrow, low block probably without the ball, and they were just trying to win that second ball every time. They knew they'd win it as well. They knew that as soon as if the ball was like there for contention, they were winning that ball. They were turning us over quite quickly, and they made things really easy for us. And it was very easy for Millwall to pick up the points yesterday, and it felt like not just a confidence issue, but I kind of knew before the game even kicked off that we were going to get beat. And I felt like their first goal came at a really bad time for us, really, because we were growing into the game. I felt like the confidence was starting to build. We were starting to be a bit better in possession, not great, but better in possession. And the tempo was slowly starting to pick up. I was like, oh, here we go. We're being the better of the two sides. Here we go. And then the first goal happened, which I'm going to come on to in a second, Tom. So be ready. But it's very, very difficult to watch at the moment, and it's more than a confidence issue for me. It's definitely the fundamentals of football. You have to get spot on. And knowing Lids and Tinkler and Campbell, they have been absolutely drilling them into them in like the last week, and they've said the basics win football, and simplicity done well wins football matches. And if you progress like that, wins titles. And we're nowhere near the standard of where we should be, and where we thought we would be at the start of the season. And the only people that can do that is the player themselves, and that comes from leadership. And Maddo did say that a lack of leadership is to blame. And do you think that is the difference, Tom? Do you think we just need that leadership to come through?
I mean, it could have an effect on it, but we should have the players there to actually provide that leadership. Now, I mean, in different ways. Obviously, Jonny House, and possibly the most experienced player in the squad, isn't more like the Grant Ledbetter type who'll shout at people, but he can kind of lead by example and help people out. Daryl Lenihan was brought in with that in mind, the whole kind of leadership thing, and we did see it in the early games. So I don't know if it's something to kind of do with the group dynamics or anything, if they're maybe not respecting people as leaders, but someone does need to kind of get hold of people on the pitch and give them a shout, and that's the same way kind of like Ledbetter would have done back in the day. I do think we are missing that on the pitch a little bit.
Dana, what do you think?
Yeah, we've spoken about this before many times, haven't we? And you talk about Jonny House and leading by example there. How leading by example? By being an average player that probably should have been replaced about 2 seasons ago. I don't get it. We spoke about the different types of leaders. I remember you saying, Jonny, that you don't necessarily need to be a shouter. I think we need a shouter. I think we need somebody that's going to be vocal. I looked at the reaction of the players after we conceded that second goal yesterday, and they were all just looking at each other. They're all just stood there looking at each other. There's nobody giving them a rollicking. And to be honest, we haven't had that type of character since Ledbetter, and he's left a giant hole in that team, in the club. And I do think we need somebody that can just be that organizer, be that gobshite, if you like, and really talk to these players, because I think we need somebody that can galvanise them. Warnock said we've got a quiet dressing room. Wilder said he wanted to address the issues of leadership. In fairness to Warnock, he brought in leaders. He brought in Bamber, Peltier, Neil Taylor, experienced players that I think can give the younger lads somebody to look up to in a way, and confide in and whatever. But then obviously we lost them in the summer because they were out of contract and they were right to be released, and moved on. But then we brought in Lenihan. Alex Moore was captain at Barnsley, but having read a bit about him, he was more of a quiet leader. So I think we need somebody that is a shouter. I know it's the kind of go-to when you think about leaders, but I do think that's what we need. Somebody that could just take somebody by the balls and say, right, you were poor there, be better next time. And yeah, it's just the same old problems, isn't it? I feel like a broken record coming on here talking about it again, because I remember under Warnock when things were really bleak, it looked like we were going down. It was the same conversation about leadership. Why hasn't it been rectified?
Just on that leadership stuff, and what he's both saying, like, about we need to bring players in, but leadership is also made in these moments. Like, pressure makes diamonds, and Boro showing that they can't handle any pressure whatsoever, and that's frustrating. I think if you want to be a leader and you want to show that leadership trait, you've got to demand it from yourself, and I think you've got to demand it in those hard moments, like you said, there, then around, like, they're all looking at each other and trying to point the blame, and that fault responsibility kind of aspect of things. But leadership is made. You can be a leader within yourself, and in terms of if things go wrong, you can change that course of action in terms of on the pitch. You can try and drag your team out the shit and get them really going again and on it. But it doesn't look like they want to do that. I mean, I think Lenihan is a good leader. You can hear him shouting all the time. It's a good leadership. Howson can prove it, and he has shown it, but just needs to be more. I just feel like there's either two things in football. One, accountability. How difficult is it to tell someone who's on thousands of pounds a week to do something when things aren't going right? They go, well, I'm still getting paid a few £1,000 every week, so well, what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do? I'm on a contract for 4 years, whatever. Like, you can have that, or you can have someone who is a leader and will look to change the dressing room and try and get people out of the woodwork, and do that through action in terms of on the pitch or in the dressing room. Having a good manager who is very, very good at EQ, like emotional intelligence, that will probably bring out the best of the players as well and trying to understand them. But at this moment in time, it is a big, big job, whoever comes in the building now, to try and turn that around and identify a potential leader and try and make them one fairly quickly, because it's going to be a long winter if we don't otherwise. But we'll have a look at these goals then, because the first goal, Tom, Boro thought it should have been a throw-in, and it wasn't. There was a foul and a big deflection. Do you think Stefan had any chance at all?
No, and I feel sorry for him, because he'd gone the right way to begin with. Very unlucky deflection. I think the way it hit Akpom, if it hit any other way, it was kind of bouncing back to the free kick taker, or off in a different direction. But it had to just hit him right on the right spot, just to kind of spin, and it was as far into the corner as you could possibly get. So I think by the time Stefan had readjusted and kind of seen what happened, I don't think he had too much of a chance with that one. But yeah, it was a poor goal to concede.
Yeah, and then the second goal, Dana.
Man, I've got a headache already. Honestly, it comes at such a bad time, because it effectively kills the game off. In the second half, you're trying to get back into it, and then that happens. It's a massive sucker punch. But when it's so easy, it's so easy. When the ball comes into the box, Fleming is in an offside position, but who's marking him? Who's supposed to be in that area? You would think Jones. It's Jones's area, right? But it comes into the box. It's put into an area, and then I think it's an aerial duel, is it, between Crooks and one of their players. Crooks loses that, which is very typical of Boro right now, because again, in those key moments, we're missing out. We're not winning them as we probably should. And then still, I would welcome anybody if you really want to go back and even talk about that game. Watch Fleming throughout the entirety of this move. He's never picked up by anybody. Jones is again, you would say that that's his area, but he's just sauntering back. And I think Paddy's got somebody. Paddy's marking somebody. Howson's marking somebody. I think they're all marking an area at least. But I feel like it's Jones there. I did question McNair initially, but watching when the ball comes into the box from the free kick, I think Paddy McNair is with somebody. I think it might be Vogelsama that he's with. But Jones just saunters back, and he has been culpable of doing that, of switching off and not being present defensively sometimes. And it's that aerial duel, that the sort of 50-50 in the air, if you like, that Crooks loses. And then, of course, out of all the players that it could possibly fall to, it falls to the player that's been free for what feels like about 15 hours rather than 15 seconds. And it's just so simple. He volleys it beyond Zach Steffen. And I spoke there about the reaction. They're all just stood there. They're all just stood there looking at each other like complete statues. They just, Maddo said it after the game, that they just accepted what had happened to them. They accepted the fate. And that is so infuriating to see.
On the last graphic, you're saying everyone is looking at Jones. I don't know if you've picked that up, but I think like that's one way to kind of say that was kind of your man. But in terms of like the phases of that
I'm agreeing that moment. I want out. just get me so far away from all of those players.
But on that goal though, like when you talk about set pieces, the phases of play in that moment, like when you're looking at Fleming there, being offside in that first phase of play is actually quite good, because people will leave you and you will generate space from that, because they know that second phase you're gonna, as the defense drops back, you're gonna come on side and you're gonna be unmarked. But on that first phase, you need to kind of pick up your man and say, right, he is the one for us to drop into. We need to get more goal side on him when this ball happens to like X, like to Y. So if the ball gets played out wide, you know it's going to be a long diag in. So you've got to try and get yourself back into that line and try and get goal side of it. And there's just so much wrong with it. I mean, if you want to look back all the way through it, you're getting that McNair's not on goal side straight away. The third phase of it, where I think Howson stood still, and then there's like a man just behind him, and then they've got like obviously Jones who just leaves Fleming by himself, and it's just all poor things. And like it comes back to the point that I made earlier, that we weren't winning the second balls, we weren't trying to turn over the play, we weren't trying to get a foothold in the game, and to be honest, it was just so poor. Honestly, probably one of the worst performances I've seen this season. And how many times have we said that in the last few weeks? And it's getting to a point now where it's just getting really frustrating for fans. And I feel for us, because I think every fan this season expected for us to be to be right near the top, really progressing this year. Last year was really good, and everyone just feels like the stuff has been kicked out of them, and it's going to take a lot for us to try and get back to the good moment. But I'm going to go at the praising place, because the praising place is the place we give praise to a player staff, chips and gravy, or chips and curry in your place, Dana. S66 Sportswear, Teesside Clothing, and many, many more. So praising place, is there a praising place for anyone this week? Tom, do you want to go first?
You know what? I mean, I don't know how popular this is going to be, but I'm going to say Zach Steffen this week. When I mentioned players doing the basics right, particularly on Wednesday, I thought he was one of them. Considering the amount of balls that he's flapped at or punched out of the box this season, ridiculous ones as well, where it could have been an easy catch. I think he made more catches in the Birmingham game than he has done all season. He was finally kind of like getting that spot on. He's made, a decent save against Birmingham when Dykesdale played there, played Scott Hogan through.
Very good save, actually, I would say.
And
saved our bacon.
That double save yesterday that he made, one from the free kick, fair enough. He made, I mean, the ball was moving. He could have done a little bit better to keep hold of it in the first place, but the reactions to make that second save, like I say, he seems to be one of the ones who's gone back to basics this week and done them extremely well.
Dana, Zach Steffen's in. Dana, who are your picks?
You know what? I'm going to put Akpom in there because I like the fact that he poached that goal against Birmingham. He is a poacher, and it's crazy, isn't it, that we're looking for that sort of player. And we did bring one in Marcus Force, but one has already been here this whole time in Chuba Akpom. So I think with him, he's taken that redemption arc really well so far. I think it's just a shame that we have become a little bit toothless up front in terms of creating those chances and become a little bit predictable in the build-up. But I also want to put in something completely unrelated to the game. I want to put in T-Side Tom, who has helped us create podcast merch, and just a little plug for this because it kind of feels like product placement here. Fantastic, just putting this in very seamlessly. But the Boro Breakdown merch, 100% of the proceeds go to the Motor Neuron Disease Association, which is our chosen charity. We are in October, which is our dedicated charity month and awareness month for MND and the Motor Neuron Disease Association. So you could go and pick up a Shithouse Island t-shirt or a Malt Curse mug and other Boro Breakdown branded things. T-Side Tom goes in the praise place because I think that is such a fantastic gesture to donate 100% of the proceeds to the Motor Neuron Disease Association. So it's www.t t-side.co.uk and the Boro Breakdown merch will be there. Sorry, lost my brain there for a second.
I hope it's a dash because I've just guessed as well. So
I was going to say
work it out. It's fine.
Same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just tomato. It's just you'll find it. It's in the comments below of the podcast provider and in your YouTube section as well. So it's fine. But I think for me, I'll probably go the coaching team. I think of Lids, Tinkler and Catamore and Leo. And I know Leo's going to get a lot of the mentions because he's the head coach at this moment in time. But you could see in that Birmingham game that this team was drilled by Craig Liddell and Max Tinkler by a country mile. It was just so basics in terms of patterns of play, style, and basics, and trying to win that second ball. And obviously, Dicko, who obviously been on the podcast a few times, he'll tell you after working under off the Lids. It was kind of felt like, this is a Craig Liddell team. This, but I feel like they deserve a lot of credit because last week when Wilder got sacked and it was just like, wow, this actually happened now. We need to get this team on the pitch and try to get a win. And when we did so against Birmingham, so really, really good for us to try and get that. And I think they deserve a place in the present place. And whether they'll be in charge come Saturday against Blackburn, I don't think they will be. But we'll soon see. And I think they just deserve the praise this week, and also praise for T-Side Tom and also our Tom as well. Tom, I'll give you a bit of praise as well, just because you don't want you to be the only one left out. But let's move on to questions because each week you send us your questions in via Twitter, our email at theborobreakdown@hotmail.com, or join our Telegram chat with 300 Boro fans chatting everything but Boro. And you've got loads of different chats in there around gaming, tickets, Championship, Premier League, and just a standard chat where anything happens. So be prepared if you want to join. It's absolutely free. So the first question, it's from Sean. He says, could not see a plan today, no identity. Howson attempts to find space to receive the ball. Very few of the other players appear to show any movement. I understand how low confidence, but a lack of desire or determination. Suppose the question is, what kind of side are we? Sean, I'm going to tell you, we're not a very good one at the moment. We're not a very good side at all. The basics are just not being done correctly. I think the attitude is quite low at the moment. Comes back to that leadership conversation that we were having as well. Vital that we get that done first when the new management team comes in. But then also, when you're a team that is in the place that you are, you've got to, as Steve Bruce says, you've just got to try and roll your sleeves up and play. And how far that takes you, by the case of Steve Bruce, not very far. But you've got to try and have quality and key moments in that place. But I think what kind of side we can be a good side. We can be a very good side. We're just not showing it at all. But the next question is from Anthony, and he says, is it about time we heard from the top? What's the project? Why wasn't Tav replaced? Was Wilder missold this vision? Danny, you can take this one. And I feel like we've spoke about this so many times over the last 4.5 years we've been on this podcast around a vision, around getting someone in as a director of football, getting the right players and getting, the whole. I mean, you can read the article on our website. I mean, we spoke about it many times, but what do you think? Is it about time we heard from the top?
I would say so. Others would disagree because they'd say that, what good does that do? And I do understand that point of view, because I mentioned it 2 podcasts ago that a lot of the quotes that Steve Gibson and co come out with are used out of context and they're misquoted, and then it becomes a stick to beat the club with. But I don't know. I just feel like something would be nice to hear. What is the direction of this club? Do we want to be competitive in the playoff region of the championship? Do we want to try to go for promotion, or is this a long-term building block sort of project where we're going to try to be competitive this season and obviously, I don't know, maybe try to push into the top 6, but it's not so much of a necessity this season. We just kind of want to keep building. Is that the direction? I'd just love to hear it. What good would it do? I don't know. I think for some fans it would just be nice to hear from him, to be honest, and just go forward knowing that we've been communicated with and we have a few of and maybe some accountability maybe for mistakes that have been made over the past few years. I would like to hear that. I know some people just don't see it as any sort of good. And I do understand that, but for me personally, I do want to have that communication from the top, because I think fans are restless right now. I think they're quite confused. They bought into the project under Chris Wilder. It was very quickly, it turned sour, didn't it? And I think it was the right decision to let Wilder go. But especially after that, when we've been taken on this journey that Wilder spoke about quite often, to then be kind of left, and I don't know, Wilder's just gone off without us. I think that kind of hurts a little bit, and I would like to hear some sort of reassurance and, what is the plan for Middlesbrough Football Club going forward?
Okay then. Next question is from Ben. He says, how important is momentum and starting off the season right? I think it's fair to say that this squad of players are much better than the league position we're in, even if we're lacking depth. Tom, take this one. How important is momentum and starting the season off right?
Well, I think last year Nottingham Forest proved the importance of momentum, but not necessarily starting the season off right. If you get momentum at the right time, you can ultimately make the playoffs and get through them like they did. And unfortunately, we've found ourselves in a very similar position to them at this point of the season. Just sacked our manager. So we've got to have someone come in, hit the ground running, and get us some momentum straight away. In terms of starting the season right, I think we'd all prefer that Boro just win every game.
It would be nice.
I don't think anyone's going into the season thinking, it doesn't matter if we don't start well. We'd rather just always be doing well. But like I say, I think Forest is one example, but there's been enough clubs that have just kind of like come out of nowhere halfway through the season or towards the end of the season and ended up having a really positive finish. So it's not the end of the world that we haven't started strong. It's very important to get the momentum when the new manager comes in.
Okay, the next question is from Jonathan. He says, it feels like we've tried every type of manager, experienced in Pulis and Warnock, inexperienced with Southgate and Woodgate. And obviously, if you want to go into like McLaren and all that kind of stuff, we can go into that. But up and coming like Monk and Karanka, local hero and Mowbray, and nothing has stuck since McLaren. No idea who should we get next. But who should we get next? Because, Leo's not going to get it. There's 3 names leading the way in Carrick, Edwards and Corberon. And I think Alan Nixon said last night that Mark Robbins is in the frame as well. But I think he just throws every name at it and to see if one sticks and he'll take credit for it. But the thoughts on... thoughts on the names linked then, because who does get your pick? Who do you guys want as the manager to come in probably this week? Dana, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think for me, my number one is still Rob Edwards, but I must admit, none of them are really jumping out to me. And none of them, Rob Edwards isn't my number one pick by a country mile. I just think that Rob Edwards, has worked under Kieran Scott before, or has at least got a relationship with him, being described as his best mate in football. I read, and he has a good coaching background as well, coaching Wolves, coaching the England youth setup for a while. Obviously did incredibly well at Forest Green Rovers, got them promoted. And I think what I've said before about a manager that can grow along with a football club, I think that would tick a lot of boxes. But also Corberan's a good middle ground between that potential and somebody that is experienced and has the CV behind him, because Corberan did fantastically with Huddersfield last season. There was a point when we played them, it was Wilder's first away game, where a lot of their fans were very, very unhappy with him, but he turned it around. He's a very flexible manager. He can play 3 at the back with really high wing backs. He can play 4 at the back, 1 up front, 2 up front. He's very flexible, Corberan, and I think that might be what Boro need. There's a few questions about the system, the formation. It doesn't work. Why do we still persist with 3-5-2? So maybe we just need fresh ideas and fresh eyes. And I think Corberan is available, and he's somebody that I think Boro fans would get behind, because, as I said, he's that middle ground between that potential and the experienced manager. I don't necessarily think we need an experienced manager. I've seen a lot of Boro fans say that we do. I don't think that's necessarily the case. Because what's just as important, if not just a tiny little bit more important than who we actually bring in, is making sure that the setup around him is good and healthy, and is the right platform for them to be able to succeed, because we've gone in with inexperienced managers before and given them inexperienced coaches around them, and we've just never quite got the right fit as a whole package. So Boro need to make sure that, you know, the coaching staff around the manager that we bring in is good. They need to make sure that that manager or head coach fits the structure in the model. That's just as important as the name and who we bring in. So for me, I think it's Rob Edwards number 1, Corberan number 2.
Tom?
I'm very similar to Dana in that none of the names are really kind of like jumping out to me, but I don't feel like at the moment any name would. You could tell me we're getting someone as accomplished as like Jose Mourinho coming in tomorrow, and I mean, I'd be looking forward to his press conferences, but I wouldn't know what to even expect on the pitch. I do agree with what Dana's just said there about we've made mistakes before in terms of like bringing in a head coach who fits the model, but then like inexperienced coaches around them. I know one of the things that Alan Nixon had put out was the potential Michael Carrick coming in, but bringing in Mike Phelan and Rene Meulenstein, I think is how you pronounce his name. I've never had to say that before.
Great pronunciation. That was on the money. On the money.
I kind of like that idea on paper. I mean, even though I think both of them have tried to be managers and not done great, maybe they're more suited to coaching. But I kind of like that idea because they've all been around Man United under Fergie, and ultimately on the training ground, standards will be very high under them. Obviously, as a manager, there's not really a lot to base anything on Carrick. But then again, there hasn't been on some of our more successful managers. That being said, I did think Rob Edwards would have been a great shout, just for the work he's done with Forest Green, and as Dana was mentioning, he's got a decent background in coaching as well. It's just we would need to bring in a decent coaching staff with him. I think if you're bringing in a head coach now, then you need a very good coaching team around him. And I think, obviously Leo will stay because I don't think he's ever going to leave. I think it's a lifetime contract. But yeah, I think the current coaching team that we have, they're all kind of very much academy based, aren't they? So they'll probably go back to their previous roles and kind of like build up from there. But we do need someone to come in for this head coach model and bring in a decent coaching team as well. So in a very kind of like long roundabout way, I'd probably lean more towards Carrick at the moment, but Rob Edwards is a very close second there.
Yeah, I'm siding with you slightly, Tom, on Carrick and Edwards. I think Edwards, like you both said, I think he's a really good foundation. He got a really good foundation as a coach. done well everywhere he's been, obviously by Watford, but I think no one does well at Watford, to be honest. So it's you can kind of like, sorry, Lou, Luke, sorry, but you know, yeah, everyone knows it's not like a secret, is it? But I think with Carrick as well, like when you look at his elite playing career, and obviously that doesn't always translate into good coaches, of course. But I think like his position as a player, I remember like previously where he'd always try and occupy the space and know how to start and move when he was playing, how to get in that right moment and try to just distribute the ball and try to create chances. And I feel like that does come quite well when you're a coach. And he showed that when he was Man United manager, interim manager for a couple of games. But in terms of his foundation, you know, working under Sir Alex, he's worked under Jose, Louis van Gaal, Ollie. I don't really want to say too much about that, but like I think he's got a really good foundation and a really good coaching ability. And from inside football, I think everyone seems to be really, really high on Michael Carrick. So it could be a good appointment from us. It does fit the system in terms of bringing players through. Middlesbrough have always wanted to try to do that. There's also like the tick the box exercise of trying to make us sustainable now, because that Gibson won't want to throw loads of money at it any more than he has done previously because he's got burnt in the past. And trying to build a team that will be sustainable, but also try and generate more and more revenue as well and get more excitement and togetherness from the fans. So I feel like he does fit the system that way, but then also so does Edwards. So I think either of those two will be perfect for me. I quite like them, but also Corberan is still a really good manager as well. So it's yes, I think he failed at Olympiacos just this season. I think he had 2 wins in 11, I think. So obviously a difficult time there, but what's saying you can come back and be a successful coach again? Anyone can be. So, but I think they're 3 good names. Mark Robbins is also a good name, but for me, I think Carrick or Edwards, I think I'd be happy with. But also I'm happy with Corberan as well. But very cop out answer. But I think I'd go to my head. I'd probably just go with Carrick for now. I think, just for history tends to repeat itself. You know, McLaren, Karanka, now Carrick. You never know. Robson as well from Manchester United. So there you go. But who knows? It's a really difficult one. But what's the first thing then that this new manager needs to do when they do take charge?
They need to get the basics right. And also they need to galvanise this unit, because we saw them play incredibly well last season. I don't think that's me overrating them. We played with such authority and confidence. And I said last podcast, we played like we knew we were the shit. And it was so good to watch us because you could see that confidence. It absorbed itself into the crowd, and those players just need to be reminded of how good they can be. And I don't believe that this team have just become bad overnight. I think they can get back to the standards that they set last season. I think they just need a manager that can put his arm around them and remind them of how good they were, remind Jones of how good he was, remind Crooks how good he was, and probably say to Crooks, you need an operation on that hernia because, mate, you cannot play on with that injury. Because apparently he has been playing with a hernia for a number of weeks, which would probably explain his performances, to be honest. But they just need a manager that could sort out the basics and really galvanise this team, because they can play. They need to believe in themselves. They've done what we saw last season, playing incredibly well, beating Manchester United, albeit we did get incredibly lucky in that game. But then there was nothing lucky about that game against Tottenham. You know, we were fantastic there. And then even in league games as well, very, very good. Winning in different ways, being the team that can pop up with a goal later on, that belief that we've lost. I think the fans have lost it. You know, when you go 1-0 down, I don't feel like Boro could get back into the game anymore, which is a shame because I did believe last season. And winning games, being defensively organised and winning games, beating Derby 4-1 and shutting all their fans up. So we've had a few ways to win. We just need to get that confidence back. That is a big percentage of playing football and winning games. It's that confidence.
Okay, well, let's move on then. Let's chat about on Blackburn then, because it's a massive game for any manager that comes in to the football club, or if it could be Leo that takes charge. But Rovers have been doing relatively quite well this season. They're very inconsistent in terms of win-loss, because since Sheffield United, they have been on that run exactly. So they've won a game, then lost a game, and they won yesterday. So, do you know what that means? We could beat them on Saturday. But also, fun fact, they've actually never drawn a game this season either. John Dahl Thomason has shown flexibility in his team by switching from a 4-2-3-1 and a 3-4-3 or 3-4-1-2. It depends how they rotate and how they play. Which is good shape, and it's a good shape for a team that likes to dominate in possession. They have done this season with low 60s in terms of possession for most games. Only lost 3 times, and one of them was against Swansea. And I think no one ever beat Swansea in possession because they just pass for passing sake. But in terms of the style, like to play through the lines, get on the ball, try and get the ball out wide. There's a few players that I want to point out. Obviously, Bertrand Diaz will always get the name, 7 goals a season, but did limp off injured yesterday. And John Dahl Thomason is still waiting for him to get a scan, so we don't know the extent of that. But Tyree Stolin's doing well this year with 4 assists, but there is a couple of players that I really do like in this side. Tyler Morton, who's on loan from Liverpool, 19-year-old centre midfielder. He's one of the highest rated players in terms of chances created this season, and he looks like a very, very good talent in that left centre midfield role. And then also the left back as well, and Pickering as well. Pickering and also Ryan Hedges on that right hand side, because Pickering is that replacement for Giles, and obviously that was a big hole in their side, and he's came into the team and done remarkably well. And also Ryan Hedges will cause a lot of problems. He's creating a lot of assists and a lot of chances for these forwards, and Millsborough are going to have to be on the toes for this one, because I feel like their attacking line and their ability to create chances is really, really strong. But obviously my personal favourite is Lewis Travis. I've been watching him for years, and he dominates the play. And if you want a replacement for Jonny Howson, Lewis Travis is your man. I mean, we'll become Middlesbrough Rovers FC again, but he is a very, very good player. And I think Boro could have a very, very difficult afternoon on Saturday if we let them dominate the ball, let them get a foothold in the game. We have to interrupt their play if we are to get anything from this game. But guys, I was going to do predictions for today. And how are you feeling about this? Because obviously, first game for a new manager could potentially be the case. Anything can happen. But how are you predicting this game? What do you think? Win, loss, draw, match abandoned? Tom, what's your prediction?
Well, they've not drawn all season, and I don't think we have much luck with like the new manager bounce. It always ends up being like a loss and a draw first, and then in a couple of games' time we start winning. So I reckon 1-1 draw on Saturday.
1-1 draw. Dana?
You know what? I'm going to go 2-2. I think it's going to be a game where, obviously, yeah, I agree with Tom. I don't think we ever have that new manager bout. So if we do get a new manager, and I can't see him winning the first game, and I think it's going to be a relatively high scoring affair between the two sides. I was looking though. Blackburn have a fairly low XG this season. If I just bring it back up on FOTMob, expected goals 12.2, which is 22nd rank in the league. So that means that they're probably going to score about 5 against us. But I'll go with 2-2.
1-1, 2-2. Should I just go 3-3? Because it's just like
Go for it. As long as it's not 0-0. We don't want another 0-0.
Yeah, I think it'll be a dead scrappy game. I think if we have to make it scrappy, to be honest, to try and get ourselves into the game, and then try and build on that. And I'll take a 1-0 win any day of the week. So I'm going to go 1-0 penalty in the 92nd minute, and that'll do me. But guys, thank you very much for joining me as always. And thank you very much to the listener for listening and watching us on YouTube as well. And just before I go, going back to the riddle aside in Johnny's happy place, with what do Alexander the Great and Winnie the Pooh have in common? Do you know? Do you still know? No,
Absolutely not a clue.
It's the middle names. There you go. That's the riddle of the day. So thank you very much, guys. A win and a defeat and a new manager await. This has been the Boro Breakdown podcast, and that was our Boro Match Day chatter in our pod of the Boro Breakdown.